You want to know what the sound of a million people fixing to have a bad day sounds like. It's not a scream, it's a hum. A low, 60 hertz vibration that rattles the fillings in your teeth right before a transformer decides to turn itself into a Roman candle. I've been listening to that hum for 22 years. My name is Michelle, but the guys on the line crew just call me Mitch or the Witch, depending on whether I'm saving their asses or telling them they wired a substation like a drunken toddler with a Lego set. I worked, in the grid control center for a state utility that shall remain nameless, mostly because I don't want their lawyers crawling up my tailpipe. My job title was Senior Load Balancing Scheduler. Sounds fancy, right? Like something you'd put on a LinkedIn profile to impress people who think electricity comes from magic pixies in the wall. In reality, I was a glorified babysitter for a statewide energy grid that was held together by duct tape, prayers, and code written when Reagan was still asking Mr. Gorbachev to tear down walls. I spent my days staring at a wall of monitors that looked like the bridge of the Star Enterprise if it had been designed by the lowest bidder. My job was simple: keep the lights on, keep the AC running so Karen in the suburbs doesn't sweat through her Lululemons, and keep the respirators humming at General Hospital so Grandma doesn't meet Jesus ahead of schedule. Hey, real quick, if you're digging this dive into the electrical underbelly of corporate hell, do me a solid and smash that subscribe button and hit the like. It keeps the lights on at my place, unlike the grid I'm about to tell you about. Seriously, 95% of you just lurk, and it breaks my heart more than a blown gasket. Thanks. Most people think the power grid is static. You flip a switch, bulb goes on. Wrong. The grid is a beast. It breathes, it gets hungry. In the morning, when everyone wakes up and turns on their coffee pots simultaneously, the grid yawns and asks for juice. In the afternoon, when the factories are churning and the sun is baking the asphalt, the grid gets angry. It spikes. It dips, it throws temper tantrums. And for the last 2 decades, I was the one hand feeding the beast, tweaking the algorithms, adjusting the load distribution, and manually overriding the automated systems that were too stupid to know that a storm front in the western county meant a voltage drop in the east. I wasn't management. I wasn't leadership. I was the furniture. I was the stain on the carpet that knew where all the bodies were buried. The engineers, guys with hard hats and scarred knuckles, they knew me. They'd call my direct line, skipping the automated help desk, whispering, "Mitch, we got a recloser acting funny on circuit 4, what do the sensors say?" And I'd tell them it's not the recloser, dummy, it's the squirrel that fried itself on the uplink 3 miles down. Reset the breaker and bring me a cruller. But to the suits upstairs, the ones with the MBAs and the soft hands, I was invisible. I was legacy cost. I was an analog player in a digital world. They looked at me and saw a middle-aged woman with coffee stains on her blouse and a pack of nicotine gum in her pocket, sitting in a dark room, typing commands into a terminal that looked like MS-DOS. They didn't see the artistry. They didn't understand that my specific manual settings, tuned over years of watching the grid's quirks, were the only thing preventing a cascading failure every time the temperature hit 90 degrees. The trouble started about 6 months ago when the old man retired. The old man was the director of operations. He was a bastard, smelled like cheap scotch and cheaper cigars, but he respected the beast. He knew that you don't poke the grid with a stick. When he left, corporate sent us a replacement. His name was Preston. Yeah, Preston. It looked like he was 3D printed at a Brooks Brothers factory. He was 32, had teeth whiter than a nuclear flash, and his resume was full of words like synergy, cloud-native optimization, and disruptive efficiency. Preston didn't walk into the control room, he strutted. He looked at my bank of monitors, my sticky notes filled with voltage calculations, my manual override switches, and he sneered. To him, I wasn't the expert. I was the bottleneck. He saw my salary and saw a number he could cut to buy himself a bonus. He saw my manual adjustments and called them inefficiencies. "Michelle," he said to me on his third day, leaning over my desk and smelling like vanilla-scented arrogance, "why are we manually scheduling load drops for the aluminum plant? The AI suite should handle that." I looked at him over the rim of my glasses, because the AI suite doesn't know that the aluminum plant runs a rogue shift on Thursdays and spikes demand by 40 megawatts in 3 seconds. If you let the auto-scheduler handle it, you'll trip the relays in 3 counties. He just smiled that vacuous, shark-like smile. "We need to trust the system, Michelle. Data doesn't lie." "Data doesn't have intuition, Preston," I shot back, lighting a metaphorical cigarette because smoking had been banned in the building since '98. "And data doesn't have to explain to the governor why the traffic lights are out." He walked away, tapping something into his iPad, probably a note to HR titled Problem Personnel. I should have known then. I should have seen the writing on the wall, written in neon letters. But I was arrogant too. I thought I was untouchable. I thought they can't fire me. I'm the only one who knows the password to the backend server. I was wrong. Turns out, stupid people with power are way more dangerous than a downed power line in a puddle. The atmosphere in the control room changed. The other operators, good kids mostly, but green, started avoiding eye contact with me. They sensed the shark in the water. Preston started holding vision meetings that I wasn't invited to. He brought in consultants who looked 12 years old and asked questions like, what if we just virtualized the load balancing? Implying that electricity was just an app you could download. I kept my head down. I kept the grid running. Summer was coming. The heat was ramping up. The beast was getting restless. I tweaked my scheduler settings, tightening the tolerances, preparing for the load. I was building a safety net for the state, woven out of code and experience. I didn't know I was weaving my own severance package. The day it happened was a Tuesday. A Tuesday in July. It was already 85 degrees at 9 a.m. The humidity was thick enough to chew. The grid was humming that low, ominous note. I was deep in the code, adjusting the ramp-up rates for the afternoon peak when the door to the control room hissed open. It wasn't just Preston. It was Preston, a woman from HR who looked like she sucked lemons for recreation, and a security guard named Steve who I'd shared donuts with for 10 years. Steve wouldn't look at me. That's when I knew. The hum in the room seemed to stop, replaced by the ringing in my ears. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I just felt a cold, hard rage settle in my gut, heavy as a lead vest. They were coming for the witch. They forgot one thing. The witch had cast all the spells that kept the castle standing. Preston didn't even have the decency to do it in a private office. He did it right there on the floor, in front of the monitors, in front of the junior operators, in front of God and the entire electrical infrastructure of the Midwest. It was a power move. He wanted to show the tribe that he was killing the alpha. Michelle, Preston said, his voice smooth as silicon lubricant. Can we have a moment? I spun my chair around. I didn't stand up. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of looking up at him. I'm busy, Preston. The delta on the north substation is drifting. I need to cap the reactive power flow before noon. That's exactly what we need to discuss, he said, flashing that veneers-only smile. We've decided to move in a different direction regarding the grid management strategy. Effective immediately, your position is being eliminated. The room went silent. I mean, dead silent. You could hear the cooling fans in the server racks whirring. The junior operators froze, fingers hovering over their keyboards like they were playing musical chairs, and the music just died. Eliminated, I repeated, tasting the word. It tasted like ash. You're eliminating the scheduler? Who's going to run the load balance? The new automated efficiency suite is fully online, Preston said, puffing out his chest like a pigeon who just found a discarded French fry. It's an AI-driven, self-healing network protocol. It's cleaner, faster, and quite frankly, it removes the human error element. We don't need manual overrides anymore. I looked at the HR lady. She was staring at a point somewhere over my left shoulder, probably disassociating so she didn't have to feel like a grim reaper in a polyester blazer. Preston, I said. I voiced dangerously low. You have no idea what you're doing. That efficiency suite is a black box. It doesn't account for the thermal lag on the transformers in Sector 7. It doesn't know that the sensor on the river crossing reads 5% high because of corrosion. My manual settings compensate for that. If you switch to full auto, you're flying blind. We have full confidence in the system, he said, checking his watch. Steve will escort you out. Can collect your personal effects. Leave your badge and the secure token on the desk. I stood up then, my knees cracked. I felt 20 years older and 10 years younger at the same time. The adrenaline was hitting me, sharpening my vision. I looked at the big board. The demand curve was creeping up, red line rising. Okay, I said. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my encrypted USB key, the one that held my custom scripts, and dropped it into my coffee mug. Plop, ruined. You want the wheel? It's yours. Michelle, please, let's not make a scene, the HR lady squeaked. No scene, I said, grabbing my purse, just math. I walked up to Preston, invading his personal bubble. He smelled like fear and mints. Listen to me closely, you corporate crouton. My scheduler settings are currently holding the frequency variance at 0.02%. The logic is set to hand off to the peaker plants at 5 p.m., but I have a manual dampener set to kick in at 5:02 p.m. to catch the rebound spike. Preston rolled his eyes. We know about the settings, Michelle. We're wiping the custom scripts. We're going with the manufacturer's default. Clean slate, I laughed. It was a dry, rusty sound. Manufacturer's default? On a grid built in 1970? Preston, if you wipe my dampener settings and let that AI run the handoff, the frequency is going to oscillate. The harmonics will hit the main bus at exactly 5:02 p.m. And he sneered. And I said, leaning in, the grid will trip. Statewide, you'll have a cascading blackout during rush hour in a heat wave. You are literally unplugging the life support to charge your iPhone. You're being dramatic, Preston said, waving a hand dismissively. The grid will run just fine without you. Better actually. We don't need your voodoo anymore, we have algorithms. Algorithms don't sweat, Preston, I said. I looked past him to the junior operator, a kid named Dave who looked like he was about to vomit. Dave, listen to me. When the frequency hits 59.8 Hz, don't try to boost it. Isolate the Western interconnect. It's your only chance to save the hospital circuit. That's enough. Preston barked. Steve, escort her out. Now, Steve stepped forward looking miserable. Sorry, Mitch, he mumbled. It's okay, Steve, I said, patting his arm. You're just doing your job, unlike him. I jabbed a thumb at Preston. I grabbed my jacket. I didn't look back at the monitors. I couldn't. It was like walking away from a baby you knew was about to crawl into traffic. But I had to. They fired the watchdog. Now they had to deal with the wolves. 5:02, Preston, I said, pausing at the heavy security door. Mark it down. 5:02 p.m. When the lights go out, remember I told you exactly what time the check would bounce. Get out, he yelled, his composure cracking just a little. I walked out into the hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed above me. For the first time in 22 years, that hum didn't sound like a job. It sounded like a countdown. The walk to the parking lot was the longest mile I've ever trekked. It wasn't the walk of shame they wanted it to be. I didn't hide my face. I walked with the heavy, stomping gait of a woman wearing steel-toed boots in a world of loafers. I passed the break room where I'd smoked 1,000 illegal cigarettes out the window. I passed the server room with its blinking green eyes. I passed the photos of the company picnics from the 90s, where everyone looked happy and nobody knew what optimization meant. My truck was baking in the sun. 2012 Ford F-150, rusted around the wheel wells, filled with empty energy drink cans and jumper cables. It fit me, reliable, ugly, and able to haul heavy loads without complaining. I threw my box of stuff, a stapler, a framed photo of my dog R.I.P. Buster, and a potted cactus that was barely clinging to life into the passenger seat. I sat there for a minute, hands gripping the steering wheel. The leather was hot enough to sear skin. I took a deep breath. The air conditioner in the truck blasted hot air for a solid minute before cooling down. Just like the grid, everything takes time to ramp up. I wanted to cry. I really did. I wanted to smash the dashboard. I'd given that place my youth, my patience, and probably a few years of my life expectancy due to stress-induced cortisol. And for what? To be tossed out like a used filter by a guy whose tie cost more than my mortgage payment. Tears don't fix circuits, and they sure as hell don't fix stupid. Rage does, cold, directed rage. I pulled out my phone. It was a personal phone, thank God, burner vibes. I opened my secure messaging app, Signal, because I'm paranoid and I know that corporate IT reads SMS like it's the morning paper. I found the contact, Barb Compliance. Barb was my counterpart in the bureaucratic dungeon. She was a chain-smoking, urban-drinking auditor's nightmare who hated Preston almost as much as I did. Preston had been dodging her mandatory safety audits for months, claiming executive privilege. I typed, I'm out. Preston fired me, effective immediately. 3 dots appeared instantly. Then what? Is he insane? The summer load profile is active. I typed back, he's running the efficiency suite full auto. He wiped my scripts. I told him the handoff crashes at 5:02. He laughed. Barb's reply was all caps, Jesus Michelle. That's a violation of NERC standards. He can't run unauthorized software on the control layer without a 30-day review. He did, and he's bypassing the manual overrides. Listen, Barb, watch the approval logs. Did he sign off on the parameter change, or did he use his admin override? A pause, a long pause, then, checking? Holy SHT. He used an emergency administrative bypass code. He tagged it as critical system update to skip the board review. He's flying rogue. I smiled. It was a grim, wolfish smile. Document it, screen cap everything, timestamp it. When the lights go out, I want his fingerprints on the murder weapon. Where are you going? Barb asked. I'm going to get a burger, a greasy one, and I'm going to wait. Do not, I repeat, do not call me unless the board explicitly authorizes it. Let him own this. He's going to sink the ship. Itch, then he better learn how to swim. I tossed the phone onto the seat next to the cactus. I fired up the truck. The engine roared, a beautiful mechanical sound of combustion and torque. I peeled out of the parking lot, leaving a little streak of rubber on the asphalt. A petty gesture? Maybe, but it felt good. I drove to Joe's Diner, a greasy spoon about 3 miles down the road. It was the kind of place where the menu is sticky and the waitress calls you hon without irony. It was 2:30 p.m. The sun was high. The thermometer on the bank sign said 98 degrees. I ordered a patty melt with extra onions and a black coffee. The waitress, a lady named Tammy who I'd known for years, looked at me sideways. Bit late for lunch, Mitch? Or early for dinner? You usually don't get out of the dungeon till 6. I got early release for good behavior, Tammy, I said, unrolling the silverware from the paper napkin. Turns out the state doesn't need me anymore. They got a robot. A robot? Tammy laughed, pouring the coffee. Honey, the toaster in the back can't even toast bread right half the time. Good luck with that. Yeah, I said, staring into the black abyss of the coffee cup. Luck ain't gonna cover it. I took a sip. It was terrible. It was perfect. I watched the clock on the wall. The second hand ticked with agonizing slowness. Tick, tick, tick. Every tick was a second closer to the peak. Every tick was the sun beating down on transmission lines, heating up the copper, increasing resistance, making the electrons fight harder to get where they needed to go. The grid was a rubber band being stretched, and Preston had just fired the only person who knew when to stop pulling. 3:15 p.m. The patty melt was sitting in my stomach like a bowling ball. I poked at a French fry, dragging it through a puddle of ketchup that looked disturbingly like automatic transmission fluid. My phone buzzed. It wasn't Barb. It was Dave, the junior operator. The kid I'd told to isolate the Western Interconnect. Mitch, readings are twitchy. The AI keeps hunting for a frequency set point, but it can't lock. It's oscillating +/0.05 Hz. Preston says it's calibrating. I didn't reply. I couldn't if I replied. I was working. If I was working, I was liable. And right now, my liability insurance was non-existent. I took a drag of my coffee and watched the screen. 3:30 p.m. Another buzz. This time it was Miller, a field engineer from the South Sector. Hey, Witch. Just got a weird order from Control. They want me to disable the thermal tripping safeties on the main transformer bank at Substation 4. He said the sensors are giving false positives and interfering with the new software. Is this legit? This sounds like suicide. I stared at the phone. My blood ran cold. Disabling thermal safeties? That wasn't just incompetence, that was negligence bordering on arson. Substation 4 was old. The oil inside those transformers was older than Preston. If they got too hot, they wouldn't just trip, they would explode. I broke my rule. I typed back, I do not work there. But if I did, I'd tell you to get that order in writing. Signed, in triplicate, and stand back about 500 feet. Miller replied, copy that, staying clear. They fired you? Seriously? Yup. Automation baby, God help us. 3:45 p.m. The diner was getting busier. People coming in for early pie or late lunch. The TV in the corner was tuned to the local news. The weather girl was pointing at a map that was entirely deep red. Record highs, she was chirping. Energy demand expected to peak at 5 o'clock p.m. Utility officials assure us the grid is ready. I snorted so loud a trucker at the next table looked at me. Ready, I muttered, ready like a turkey at Thanksgiving. 4 o'clock p.m. The phone started blowing up. It wasn't just texts anymore, it was missed calls. Dave again, then Sarah, another operator. Then a number I didn't recognize, probably middle management panicking. I put the phone on Do Not Disturb but left the screen face up. It was a torture device now. Mitch, voltage is sagging on the 500 kV lines. The AI isn't injecting reactive power. It's trying to shed load instead. Why is it shedding load? Dave. Because the algorithm is optimized for cost, you idiot, not stability, I thought. It sees the price of power spiking on the interstate market and decides it's cheaper to brown out a neighborhood than to buy expensive juice from the peaker plants. Preston's efficiency at work. I signaled Tammy for a refill. My hand was shaking, just a little. It's a phantom limb sensation. I could feel the grid. I could feel the frequency dropping. 59.98, 59.95. It's like riding a bike and feeling the chain start to slip. 4:15 p.m. Barb texted. Compliance update. The director, Preston, just yelled at a frantic engineer to trust the dashboard. He's sweating. He's looking for the manual overrides, but he doesn't know the sequence. He keeps typing his password into the wrong terminal. I visualized it. Preston, in his slim-fit suit, realizing that the beast didn't care about his MBA. He was probably mashing buttons like a kid playing Street Fighter. He's locked out. I whispered to the ketchup bottle. I told you. The dampener scripts are encrypted. You can't just bypass them without the key. And the key is in my coffee mug in the trash. 4:25 p.m. The lights in the diner flickered, just once, a quick dip. The hum of the refrigerator behind the counter changed pitch, dropped an octave, then revved back up. Whoa, Tammy said, looking up. Ghost in the machine. Not a ghost, I said, putting a $20 bill on the table. It's a warning shot. I couldn't sit there anymore. I needed to move. I walked out to my truck and sat on the tailgate. The heat was oppressive. The air felt heavy, charged with static. You know that feeling before a tornado, that pressure in your ears? It was like that, but man-made. I checked the time. 4:30 p.m., 32 minutes. The grid was screaming now. I knew it. The phase angles were widening. The generators were fighting each other. The synchronization was slipping. And Preston was probably standing there, looking at a screen full of red alarms, realizing that disruption isn't just a buzzword, it's what happens when you ignore physics. I lit a cigarette, a real one. I kept a pack hidden in the glove box for emergencies. This qualified. I took a drag, the smoke filling my lungs, grounding me. Come on, Preston, I exhaled. Figure it out. You're the genius. Innovate your way out of a blackout, but I knew he couldn't, because he didn't respect the work. He thought it was just data. He didn't know that you have to listen. My phone rang. It was the main line for the utility board of directors, the heavy hitters, the people who fire Preston. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times, let them sweat. Let them see the lights flicker. Let them understand exactly what legacy expertise is worth. I picked up on the 4th ring. Hello, I said, sounding bored. Michelle, this is Chairman Sterling. His voice was tight. We have a situation. I'm unemployed, Mr. Sterling, I said. I don't have situations. I have free time. Michelle, listen to me, Sterling barked. He sounded like a man who was watching his stock portfolio catch fire. We are seeing instability across the entire ISO. Preston says? Well, Preston is saying the system is experiencing unforeseen anomalies, but the engineers are saying we're about to lose the grid. The engineers are right, I said, picking a piece of tobacco off my lip. You're about 30 minutes away from a hard crash. 5:02 p.m. to be precise. 5:02? Why 5:02? Because that's when the shift change logic hands off the load balancing from the solar array ramp down to the natural gas peakers. My script handles the harmonic distortion during that handoff. Preston wiped my script. So, when the digital handshake happens, the grid is going to get confused. It's going to think there's a fault and it's going to trip the breakers to protect itself. Boom, dark ages. Can you talk Preston through the fix? Sterling asked. I laughed out loud. A harsh, barking sound. Talk him through it? Mr. Sterling, that's like trying to talk a toddler through landing a 747. The code isn't there. He deleted it. It needs to be rewritten, compiled, and injected into the control layer. Manually, while the system is live. Get down here, Sterling demanded. We'll authorize overtime. Overtime? I stared at the Motel 6 sign across the street. Sir, you fired me for inefficiency. I'm not an employee. I'm a civilian eating a patty melt. If you want my consulting services, the rate is significantly higher than my hourly wage. Name your price, Sterling said, desperation. I could smell it through the phone. I want Preston gone, I said, right now. I want him escorted out of the building before I step foot in the parking lot. I want his badge deactivated. And I want a contract, signed by you, guaranteeing my position as Director of Operations with full autonomy. No more consultants, no more synergy. Just me and my team running the grid the way it's supposed to be run. Michelle, we can't just fire a director without a hearing. 4:38 p.m., Mr. Sterling, I interrupted. Have 24 minutes. The frequency is probably at 59.90 right now. At 59.85, the underfrequency relays start popping. You negotiate with me or you negotiate with the angry mob that's going to storm your office when their AC cuts out. Silence. Then I heard him sigh. I'm sending a courier with the contract, please. Just come back. I'll head that way, I said. But if I see Preston's face, I turn around. I hung up. Didn't rush. I finished my cigarette. I knew the traffic would be bad, but I knew the back roads. I knew every transformer and substation along the route. I drove toward the city. The sky was a bruised purple color. Heat lightning flashed in the distance, nature mocking us. As I drove, I saw the signs. Traffic lights were out of sync, blinking yellow. A billboard for a lawyer injured, call Todd, was flickering like a strobe light. The beast was dying. My phone pinged. Barb again. Security just walked Preston out. He was crying, literally crying. He tried to take his laptop and Steve snatched it out of his hands. It was beautiful. Good, I muttered, shifting gears, one rat down, but the ship was still sinking. I pulled up to the utility headquarters at 4:50 p.m. The gate was open. The security guard, Steve, was standing there, waving me in like I was the president. He looked terrified. Mitch, thank God, he yelled as I rolled past. The alarms are audible from the parking lot. I parked in the director's spot, Preston's spot. It felt petty, but hey, I'm human. I walked into the lobby. It was chaos. People were running around with binders, shouting. The receptionist looked at me with wide eyes. They're waiting for you in the cage, she whispered. I took the elevator. It felt slow, too slow. I checked my watch. 4:55 p.m. 7 minutes. The elevator doors opened on the ops floor. The sound hit me first. It wasn't a hum anymore. It was a cacophony. Alarms were screeching, high-pitched, piercing wails. Red strobe lights were flashing, painting the walls in blood-colored pulses. The control room was a scene from a disaster movie. The junior operators were standing up, shouting readings. Sector 9 is overloading. We lost the feed from the nuclear plant. Frequency is 59.82. We're losing it. And there, in the middle of the storm, is an empty chair, Preston's chair. I didn't run. You never run in a crisis. It scares the troops. I walked. I walked straight to the center console, the captain's chair. The room went quiet, or as quiet as it could be with the alarms blaring. Everyone turned to look at me. Dave, the kid, looked like he was about to faint. Mitch, he squeaked. I threw my purse on the desk. I cracked my knuckles. All right, children, I said, my voice cutting through the noise. Recess is over. Looked at the main screen. It was a sea of red. The load curve was a vertical wall. The frequency was wobbling like a drunk on a tightrope. 4:58 p.m. Dave, I barked. Kill the AI, hard kill. Pull the server plug if you have to. I want manual control on all sectors. But the protocol says, screw the protocol, I roared. I am the protocol, kill it. Dave scrambled. He typed a command. The screen flickered. The optimized by system banner vanished. The raw data flooded in. It was ugly. Okay, I said, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Here we go. 4:58 p.m. and 30 seconds. The grid was shuddering. You could feel the floor vibrating. The massive transformers in the basement were groaning under the strain. Frequency is 59.80, Sarah yelled. If it hits 59.7, the automatic load shedding kicks in. We lose half the state. Not on my watch, I muttered. I didn't have my scripts. Preston had wiped them. I had to do this raw. I had to type the code from memory in real time while the system was trying to commit suicide. My fingers were a blur. Pseudo override limit, set dampener coefficient equals 0.85, route overflow aux bus B. It was like playing jazz piano while the piano was on fire. Dave, I shouted without looking up. Get ready to inject power from the hydro plant. I need everything they've got. Open the floodgates. They're not spun up. It takes 10 minutes. We don't have 10 minutes. Bypass the safety governors. Slam the valves open. If we blow a seal, we blow a seal. I need megawatts, and I need them now. Copy, Dave yelled, his voice cracking. 5 o'clock p.m. The handoff began. The solar arrays started to go offline as the sun angle dropped. The load shifted instantly to the fossil fuel plants. This was the moment. Efficiency Suite would have dropped the ball right here. The graph on the big screen spiked. The red line shot up. Harmonics are building, Sarah screamed, it's oscillating, we're gonna trip. The lights in the control room died. The emergency backup red lights kicked in instantly, bathing us in a hellish glow. The alarms got louder. Steady, I said mostly to myself. Steady, girl. I was talking to the grid. I watched the waveform. It was jagged, angry. I needed to smooth it out. I needed to introduce a counterfrequency, a digital shock absorber. 5:01 p.m. Mitch, the breakers on the North Loop are heating up, 98% capacity. Let 'em cook, I said. Hold the line. My hands were sweating. My eyes were burning. This was it, the 5:02 paradox. The moment the automated logic would check the status, see the chaos, and panic. I typed the final command. It was a patch, a dirty, ugly piece of code that forced the system to ignore the error flags for exactly 10 seconds. A blindfold, execute override sequence alpha. Now, I hit enter. I hit it hard enough to crack the key. 5:02 p.m., the room held its breath. The hum of the fan seemed to stop. On the screen, the red line trembled. It shot up, up, and then, right as it touched the critical failure line, my dampener kicked in. The logic held. The blindfold worked. The system didn't see the error. It bridged the gap. The line plateaued. Then slowly, painfully, it began to dip back down. Green indicators started popping up like daisies. Frequency stabilizing, Sarah whispered like she didn't believe it. 59.85, 59.90, 59.95. Hydro is online, Dave yelled. We have positive pressure. The load is balancing. The emergency lights clicked off. Main fluorescents flickered back on. The alarms silenced one by one until only the steady, rhythmic hum of the cooling fans remained. I sat back in the chair. My shirt was stuck to my back. My hands were trembling uncontrollably now. I looked at the clock. 5:03 p.m. We're clear, I said, my voice raspy. Grid is stable. Resume normal monitoring. The room exploded. People were cheering. Dave looked like he wanted to hug me but was too scared. Sarah was crying. I didn't cheer. I felt drained, empty. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a piece of nicotine gum and popped it in my mouth. Don't get too happy, I said. We still have to get through the night peak, but the patient is stable. The door to the control room opened. It was Sterling, the chairman of the board. He looked pale. He looked at the screen, then at me. Michelle, he said. I spun the chair around slowly. That's Director Michelle to you, Bob. You're standing in my light. The adrenaline crash is worse than the panic. About 20 minutes after the save, my hands finally stopped shaking and the anger returned. Sterling was standing there, looking like a schoolboy called to the principal's office. Behind him stood Barb from compliance, holding a thick file folder like it was a weapon. She gave me a wink. Director, Sterling said, testing the word. That was impressive. That wasn't impressive, Bob, I said, standing up and stretching my back. That was unnecessary. That was a near-miss event that should trigger a federal investigation. And it's going to because Barb here has the logs. I nodded at Barb. She stepped forward. We did a forensic dump of Preston's terminal, Barb said, her voice crisp. Turns out the efficiency suite wasn't just corporate stupidity. It was corruption. Explain, Sterling said, narrowing his eyes. Preston was beta testing unverified software from a vendor called Gridley, Barb said, dropping a stack of papers on the desk. He was getting a kickback, a consulting fee paid to a shell company in Delaware. He fast-tracked the installation to hit a quarterly deadline so he could trigger the payment. The room went silent again. This wasn't just incompetence anymore. This was criminal. He sold the stability of the state grid for a check? I asked, feeling the bile rise in my throat. Basically, Barb said, and here's the kicker. He received an email from the vendor 2 days ago warning him about the harmonic instability issue at load handoff. The exact thing you warned him about, Mitch. The vendor told him to delay the rollout. Preston replied. Barb flipped a page. He replied, ignore the warnings. The legacy staff is risk-averse. Push the update. I'll handle the optics. I'll handle the optics, I repeated. Translation, I'll fire the person who knows better so nobody questions me. Sterling looked like he was going to be sick. He knew it would fail. He gambled, I said. He bet that the AI could catch it. He bet against the beast. And he used my job as the ante. Where is he? Sterling asked, his voice low and dangerous. Security walked him out, Barb said. But he's still in the parking lot. He's trying to call his lawyer. But I think he's having trouble getting a signal. We may have, accidentally, throttled the bandwidth to his cell phone. I smiled. Barb was vicious. I loved her. Bring him back up, I said. What? Sterling asked. Bring him back up, I said. Not here, to the conference room. The one with the glass walls. I want every operator on this floor to see him. And I want him to see the grid running. I want him to see what legacy bloat looks like when it's saving his ass. Sterling nodded. Do it. While they went to fetch the traitor, I walked around the room. I touched the shoulders of the junior operators. Good work, Dave. Nice catch on the hydro, Sarah. I was re-establishing the tribe. The fear was gone, replaced by a grim pride. We were the mechanics of the apocalypse, and we had won. But I wasn't done. The win had to be absolute. I pulled up my email, my new email, which IT had frantically restored and upgraded. I drafted a message to the entire company. Subject line, operational update returned to standard protocols. The body of the email was simple. Effective immediately, all automated control systems are suspended pending a full safety review. Manual overrides are in effect. The grid control center is under the command of Director Michelle last name. Any attempts to bypass safety protocols for efficiency will be met with immediate termination. We keep the lights on. Do not gamble, I hit send. A collective ding echoed across the floor as phones and computers received the message. Then the elevator doors opened. Two security guards, Steve and a big guy named Tiny, dragged Preston out. He looked wrecked. His tie was undone, his hair was a mess, and he was sweating through his expensive shirt. He saw me standing at the console. He stopped, struggling. Michelle, he stammered. Look, there was a misunderstanding. The data indicated. Shut up, Preston, I said. I didn't yell. I just spoke with the weight of the grid behind me. The data didn't indicate anything. You ignored the data because you wanted a payout. We have the emails, we have the logs. Barb has already forwarded them to the NERC Enforcement Division and the FBI. Preston's face went white. FBI, critical infrastructure tampering, I said. It's a felony, Preston. Enjoy federal prison. I hear the lighting is terrible. I took Preston away. He didn't scream, he just whimpered. It was pathetic. I almost felt bad for him, almost. Then I remembered the stress fractures in the turbine blades that his optimization probably caused, and the pity evaporated. Sterling placed a document on the desk. The contract, he said, as discussed, Director of Operations, full autonomy. Salary is, well, it's triple what you were making. I picked up a pen, and the clause about the staffing. You hire who you want. You fire who you want. No questions asked. I signed it. My signature looked jagged, adrenaline still working its way out of my system. One more thing, I said, handing the paper back. I want a budget for upgrades. Real upgrades, not AI buzzwords. I want new sensors, new breakers, and I want to hire 3 more senior engineers. Veterans, people who know what a soldering iron smells like. Done, Sterling said. Just keep the lights on. That's the job, I said. Sterling left. The suits filtered out. The room returned to its natural state, a dark cave illuminated by the glow of monitors. I sat there for a long time. The night shift was coming on. The load was dropping as the city went to sleep. The beast was settling down for the night, breathing slower. Dave rolled his chair over. So, you're the boss now? Looks like it, I said. Does that mean we have to wear ties? If you wear a tie in my control room, I'll strangle you with it, I said. We work for a living here. Dave grinned. Good to have you back, Mitch. I looked at the screen. The frequency was a flat, steady line at 60.00 Hz. Perfection, it was beautiful, it was art, but I knew it wouldn't last. Tomorrow would bring a new challenge. A storm, a heat wave, a squirrel chewing on a line. The grid never stops. It waits. I pulled the potted cactus out of my box and put it back on the desk. Welcome home. Bike, I muttered. I checked my phone. One last message from Preston, sent right before they took his phone. You're a dinosaur, Michelle. You can't stop progress. I typed a reply, knowing he'd never see it, but needing to send it anyway. I'm not a dinosaur, Preston. I'm the asteroid. I deleted the message. He wasn't worth the data plan. I stood up and walked to the big window overlooking the city. Millions of lights, street lamps, skyscrapers, porch lights. People cooking dinner, watching TV, reading bedtime stories. They had no idea how close they came to the dark. They had no idea that their comfort hung by a thread, and that the thread was held by a middle-aged woman in a stained cardigan who just wanted a cigarette. And that's the way it should be. They don't need to know the magic. They just need the magic to work. 2 weeks later, the dust had settled. The investigation was in full swing. Preston was out on bail, but his career was radioactive. His face had been splashed across the industry newsletters as the guy who almost melted down the state. He was done. He'd be lucky to get a job changing batteries in smoke detectors. I was in the big office now, the director's office. I hated it. It was too clean, too quiet. I spent most of my time down on the floor with the troops, but I kept the office for the meetings with the board. I had replaced the abstract art on the walls with schematics of the 1985 substation builds. I had replaced the espresso machine with a bun coffee maker that burned the coffee just right. Barb came in holding a tablet. You see the latest from the grapevine? Do I want to? Preston's wife filed for divorce, Barb said, grinning wicked, cited irreconcilable differences and loss of income. Apparently she wasn't into the unemployed felon aesthetic. Tough break, I said, not looking up from my reports. Did they fix the recloser on Circuit 9? Yeah, Miller fixed it this morning. Mitch, you gotta enjoy the win a little bit. You crushed him. I leaned back in the leather chair. It squeaked. I didn't crush him, Barb. The grid crushed him. I just got out of the way. Bullshit, she said. You set the trap. You let him hang himself. Maybe I said, or maybe I just know that you can't bullshit physics. That evening I went home. My house was quiet. No husband, divorced 10 years ago. He couldn't handle the shift work. Just the dog's ghost and a lot of silence. I poured a glass of cheap whiskey. I sat on my back porch. I could hear the hum of the transformer on the pole in the alley. It was a comforting sound, a lullaby. I pulled out my phone and checked Reddit. I saw a post on r/antiwork about a boss who tried to automate his team and failed. I smiled. I wasn't a hero. I was a mechanic. I was a janitor. I was the woman you don't look at twice in the grocery store. But I held the lightning in my hands. I took a sip of whiskey. It burned, just like the ozone in the control room. So to all the Prestons out there, to all the shiny new managers with their buzzwords and their efficiency algorithms, go ahead. Fire the old guard. Cut the dead weight. Ignore the people who know how the machine actually works. But when the lights flicker, when the screen goes black, when the silence gets loud, don't call me, I'm off the clock. And for the rest of you, the ones keeping the world running with duct tape and caffeine, stay safe, watch your six. And never, ever let them touch your settings. Mitch out. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.